Welcome to the Roaming Yeti podcast, where we share travel stories full of nostalgia, interesting locations, and the tales behind those locations. I am your host and head Yeti, Beth Scalacci. Whenever I think about a road trip, I also tend to think about the food involved. This is one reason I like asking Roaming Yeti guests what their favorite road trip food is. But I have to say, when I think about road trip foods, I tend to just think about those food items I pack in the car or I grab at a gas station to give me a little energy till we reach our destination. I knew there was much more to it. And so I sent our favorite Yeti, Addie, out to research and report on the history of road trip food. Based on the field notes that she left on my desk, I would say she had something with some cheese dust on it, a little Cheeto, some kind of situation like that, because there's orange fingerprints everywhere. Oh well, we'll figure it out. Are you ready? You ready to dig into road trip food? Let's roam. As soon as I discovered from going through Addie's field notes that road trip food isn't just about satisfying hunger, it's also about enhancing the overall travel experience. It adds that element of adventure to the journey. I tend to think destination with road trip, and I need to adjust that it's really the journey and how can we enhance that adventure. We thought it was just throwing some beef jerky in the car and heading off, but there's more. So let's dig into the history of road trip food, shall we? So imagine you're traveling in the 19th century. You're on a road trip and you're hungry. What are you going to eat? Well, back then, really the food was about simple, hearty, and anything portable. So travelers had to be resourceful and even creative in order to feed themselves on their journeys. Now, some of the most common road trip foods in the 19th century included hardtack, which was a hard, dry biscuit that was made from flour, water, and salt. And it was easy to store and transport, and it could last for months without spoiling. There was also salt pork, which is cured in salt to preserve it, and it would be eaten on its own or cooked with other ingredients. Dried beans provided a great source of protein and fiber, and they can be cooked with water or that salt pork to really make a hearty meal. Coffee was a popular beverage for road trippers. It was easy to make, and it could help to stay alert on long drives. I guess not. Some things haven't changed much, huh? Still like a coffee for the drive. Here's one that doesn't work today. Whiskey. Whiskey was also a popular beverage for road trippers, and it could be used to warm up on cold nights or to medicate minor ailments. Definitely better for after you're driving for the day. And also, they might have stopped at taverns or farmhouses along the way to purchase some meals. Now, as we move into the 20th century, road trip food was shaped by the growing automobile culture, the construction of highways, and this increasing desire for adventure and exploration. So let's take a little look at what road trip food looked like then. In the 1900s and the 1910s, road trips were more of an adventure into the unknown. They didn't have all the information we had, and travelers often brought their own food and meals, and it consisted of simple and portable items like sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, and fruit. Picnicking by roadside was a common way to enjoy their meals during road trips, and families packed picnic baskets with sandwiches, fresh produce, and baked goods, and there were rest areas and parks that became popular stops for these picnics. There was also this introduction of travel guides and cookbooks for motorists. They provided tips and recipes for road trip meals, and these guides often included advice on packing provisions and planning for picnics. Gotta see if I can get a hold of one of these old travel guides. It's now on my want to find list for sure. Road trip food in the early 20th century was, like I said, it was relatively simple, but it was starting to become more convenient and accessible to travelers. So road trip food in the 1920s and 30s, again, continued to evolve as auto culture evolved. The 20s brought the construction and popularization of Route 66, known as the Main Street of America. And this famous highway would later become iconic for road trips and the diners and food stops along this route. But other things going on in the 20s were picnicking. Similar to the previous road trips, involved a lot of picnicking by the roadside. This one was really interesting. Thermos bottles became widely used to keep your beverages hot, such as coffee and hot chocolate. And they would also carry soup and broth. And another thing that became popular was canned food. Canned fruits, vegetables, and even meats were convenient road trip meals. And canned soups and beans and fish were also among the staples used. In the 1920s, auto camps or motor camps became popular. Now, these were places where travelers could park their cars, set up camp, and cook meals over open fires. Camping food was simple and often included the canned goods that we talked about and other campfire cooking. Now, often, too, travelers would stop at small country stores and local eateries along the way to purchase fresh produce, dairy, and baked goods, probably on their way to the picnicking places. Now, as we move into the 1930s, we discover a few more developments. As we know, the 30s were marked by the Great Depression, which had a significant impact on travel and road trip food. Many people had tight budgets and had to make do with simple and affordable meals. Also in the 1930s, Route 66 continued to develop, and it provided travelers with more accessible and improved dining options. Automats. Automat restaurants were really popular during the 1930s, and these are those self-service eateries where customers could select hot dishes and baked goods from vending machine-style windows. I actually remember these from a hospital where I grew up that we would go over to and visit, and getting the food from those. I have very vivid memories of the automats. So I was surprised that they were so popular in the 1930s. In addition, diners were gaining popularity in the 1920s, and that continued into the 30s as well. Your hamburgers, your hot dogs, meatloaf, all these foods were available. And in addition to, stopping and eating at places where some travelers were purchasing boxed lunches or lunch pails for their road trips. These meals typically included sandwiches, fruit, and a drink. Think of the original value meal or combo meal there in the 1930s. And travelers were stopping at family farms and markets to buy produce and supporting local agriculture. And again, we had these homemade snacks that families were making, cookies, fruit preserves, and drying their own fruits. And these dried fruits came from the techniques of home canning and food preservation that became really common during the 1930s. It enabled families to keep their food longer and bring those items onto their road trips. So these decades really laid the foundation for the culture of road trips, emphasizing self-sufficiency and reliance on simple, homemade, and easily transportable food. And road trip food during this period really reflected some of those economic constraints, but people still had that spirit of adventure and exploration, so they made it work. Now, we move into the post-war economic boom that really influenced road trip food in the 1950s and 60s. This was the rise of the automobile culture, the emergence of the American diner, and even fast food chains. In the 50s, we saw the proliferation of drive-in restaurants, and these were characterized by car hops that came out to your car, took your order, and served your meals directly to you. And these were really popular places to grab a meal on the road. They often featured hamburgers, hot dogs, and milkshakes. Diners, again, they were really like the hitting it on all cylinders in 1950s. They were all-day diners. Some had really hearty breakfasts for those early morning travelers out there. And in addition to those drive-in restaurants and the diners, this is when we saw fast food. The 1950s witnessed the birth of fast food chains like McDonald's and Burger King, and these chains introduced the concept of quick and consistent dining experiences, and they really paved the way for the fast food culture that would dominate in the following decades. Fried chicken. This is when, Kentucky Fried Chicken gained popularity in the 50s. Portable buckets of fried chicken. I mean, that's the convenient road trip meal. And in addition to these food, there were more and more roadside motels that were featuring. They had on-site restaurants and coffee shops, and that, gave sort of people an opportunity to rest and fuel up. Of course, thinking of Schitt's Creek, I think of the Rosebud Motel of what it would have been in the 1950s in its glory, I'm sure, serving people. And the picnic culture. Again, the picnics were still going on. There were scenic rest stops and parks to enjoy all that food that they picked up at diners and drive-ins and the Kentucky Fried Chicken. So people were still, wanting to eat outside and enjoy the view as well. Now, as we move into the 60s, we saw, again, the expansion of fast food chains. More and more locations, different kinds of foods. They could count on finding familiar items and consistency in their meals. I mean, that's really the thing about fast food. You know what you're going to get. Coffee shops were a common sight along highways in the 1960s. They offered hearty breakfasts and classic diner fare. You could enjoy eggs, bacon, pancakes. Man, I'm really making myself hungry right now. And in the 60s, again, the automats, while they were sort of in the decline, they were still in operation in the 60s, and people were still using them. If you're a Marvel fan and you watch Loki, you know that Mobius is a fan of the automat at the TVA. He likes to get his key lime pie. So it's, they were on the decline, but they were still being used by people. Regional favorites, people began to experience different regions in the country, and they realized that they had their own unique road trip food specialties. So people were getting a little more adventurous. They were breaking out from the consistency and the known food and trying regional favorites, like in the Midwest, hot dish casseroles, in the South, biscuits and gravy. And also the 1960s marked a period of increased food advertising on television and billboards. So fast food chains and restaurants were heavily marketing their offerings and contributing to the popularity of their items. And in addition to all these convenience stores, here come my convenience stores, they began to emerge, and they were offering travelers, quick snacks, beverages, prepackaged sandwiches, and so forth. And even the design of cars in the 1960s were conducive to the road trip food, because they often had fold down tables so that travelers could, enjoy their meal right there in the vehicle. So the 50s and 60s really reflected a cultural shift towards a car-centric travel and the desire for quick, affordable, and family dining options. And road trip during this food was characteristic of, the evolving dining landscape in the U.S. Now, as we keep moving forward, road trip food in the 70s through the 80s was again influenced by evolving cultural trends, the expansion of the fast food industry, and the increasing diversity of culinary choices. So here's what, road trip food sort of looked like during those. In the 70s, we witnessed the continued expansion of fast food chains like McDonald's, Burger King, and even Taco Bell. And these, again, they provided that convenient, affordable dining options. Drive-throughs became more prevalent. So you didn't even have to go into your fast food restaurants. You could drive through and just keep on the road. Food trucks and street foods in some cities began offering diverse options for on-the-go dining. And then in the 1980s, again, fast food, I mean, it's still there. It's still it's still dominating. But the drive-throughs and the standardized menus just really made it easy to find that familiar meal. Convenience stores, we have travelers increasingly relying on convenience stores like 7-Eleven for quick snacks, beverages, and the gourmet burger. This is so interesting to me. In the 1980s, this is sort of the emergence of gourmet burger joints, and they offered customizable upscale burger options. So these sort of started, competing with those fast food, familiar, consistent burgers. And also we had family style restaurants like Denny's and IHOP, and they became popular for their all day breakfast. And again, very convenient stops for road trippers. Now, road trip food in the 2000s sort of blended traditional favorites with emerging culinary trends. And it was a decade sort of characterized by growing interest in health-conscious eating, convenience, and, more diverse flavors. So here's some of the key aspects. Again, fast food, still dominant, always going to be, along with the drive-through. But drive-through became even more convenient because we sort of had that introduction of mobile ordering and payment options. It was just faster, quicker, easier to do. We saw coffee culture saw significant growth during this decade. This was Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts becoming more popular and everywhere. You could get your caffeine fix and a snack and hit the road. The 2000s also, we witnessed an increasing demand for healthier fast food options. Many chains introduced salads, grilled items, and low-calorie choices to cater to health-conscious consumers. And we also saw, in addition to the fast food, we saw Subway and other sandwich chains gain popularity as what we thought then was a relatively healthier and customizable alternative. Again, food truck momentum in the 2000s, we see that even more popular now. Convenience stores got wider selections. There were more of them. And then there was this emerging in international cuisine. So diners showed an increased interest in global and ethnic foods such as Thai, Vietnamese, Mexican, and even sushi became widely available at restaurants and places on the road. And when we talked about fast food, we sort of were talking, McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, they're sort of everywhere throughout the U.S. But there was this regional fast food chains were gaining recognitions that travelers sought out these places. For example, in the West, In-N-Out Burger and Whataburger in the South. So, you had both your national fast food and then your regional that people sort of sought out when they were in those areas. In addition, energy bars and healthier snacks like granola bars, yogurt, and fruit cups became popular road trip options. And the 2000s also saw an increase in food allergen awareness. So this led to a lot more food labeling and options for people with dietary restrictions, which helped them have safer food choices for sure. And the rise of smartphones and GPS technology really made it easier for travelers to find nearby restaurants, plan their stops, and read reviews, which led them to more informed choices and maybe could find things a little off the regular path, and be a little more adventurous. And also, food challenges. The 2000s saw the emergence of food challenges where diners would attempt to consume large quantities of food within a set time limit or really hot food. And so some travelers on their road trips would seek out these restaurants and, take on those challenges. And a lot of this was because of the food documentaries, Man versus Food, Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives. These really helped popularize a lot of these destinations for people. So overall, road trip food in the 2000s reflected a changing culinary landscape with an emphasis again on convenience and health conscious choices and an interest in diverse and regional flavors. And the rise of the foodie culture and social media has also encouraged road trippers to seek out regional specialties and photogenic, Instagram worthy dishes during their journeys. So there's a few ways that social media has really changed road trip food. First, it has made it easier for travelers to discover new and exciting food options, which is really cool. We can use social media platforms. We can search for restaurants. We can look for food trucks along their route. And we can also read reviews, look at photos, and it really can help us decide where to eat. And second, social media has made it easier for travelers to share their experiences in turn. So you're reading and you're finding out the information, but you want to share you're posting pictures, you're posting videos, and you're giving recommendations. So it's really created this community of road trip foodies. Excuse me. They can connect, they can share their passion, share tips, recommendations, and photos. And it's really sort of cool because it's given smaller restaurants and off the beaten path restaurants and food trucks, this access to an audience they may not have had. So, for once, overall, social media has had a positive impact on road trip food. And that really brings us to the conclusion at our history of road trip food. So I would say we've come a long way since salt pork and hardtack, thank goodness, which gives us a lot more variety. And I realized after looking through these field notes that what I often consider a road trip is actually just traveling via car to a destination and getting food along the way, or bringing it with us just to get us through that trip, just to get us to the destination. And I definitely want to change that. We have an upcoming trip that I hope to make the journey to the destination much more of an adventure, a good adventure, no bad adventures, please. But I'm going to try to do some strategic stops along the way to check out some different kinds of food and things that we wouldn't normally do. So what are my favorite go-to road trip snacks right now? If I'm bringing something with us, I like to bring like a Chex Mix or a trail mix. Of course, I always need to bring something sweet. Usually cookies are a good thing. And for our early morning departures, I will have my hydro flask full of coffee and ready to go. Now, I will say I have our two paths we're driving the most these days are Rochester, New York, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and they both have Sheetz gas stations along the way. Sheetz, if you ever want to sponsor me, let me know. I am a big fan. They have a cheese stuffed pretzel. And I love their milkshakes. We will often just grab milkshakes and get back on the road. So those are my favorite go-to road trip snacks right now. I will update you after our adventure in December. So yeah, that's my go-to right now. But I really hope that these episodes inspire you to get out there and roam, even if it's in your own neighborhood, at your own, diner or Sheetz, go for it. So please subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you like what we're doing here, please leave a review and a rating. It means so much to us. And also to help support us, please head to yeti2shop.com to pick up some Roaming Yeti merch. We'll talk to you soon and keep roaming.